Can somebody move? We accept the Councillor Knapnov, seconded by Councillor Randall. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Matters of an urgent nature, nothing reported to me. Now we come on to the public hearing of the long-term plan 2021-41 submissions. The submitter will get 3 minutes, after which the buzzer will ring or buzz, and then we've got 12 minutes of question time, and bang on once the 15-minute slot is finished, buzzer will, and so the next person's got to come. We've got 3 days of hectic work ahead. We need to keep to the time and also make sure your questions are sharp and precise and without any very long preambles or post-rambles or rambling in general. The first submitter we have is from Kāpiti Cycling Action Group, Lynn. Submission 30.
Okay, I thought it was automatic. Do I have 10 minutes or 2 times 5 or 2 times 3? I've got 3 different versions of how much time I've allowed today.
Because
I have 2 submissions.
2 submissions. Okay,
I was told verbally on Friday
right,
that
it's 2 times 3. Thank you.
2 times 3?
Yep.
I thought it was 5 for a group.
Well, if you want 5
I have a letter
for a group,
from
you got 5
laws saying it's 5 minutes for a group.
Yep. Okay, then 5 minutes for the group.
And I had advice verbally on Friday that I could present my 2 submissions consecutively, which means 10 minutes. I just want to clarify. I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste my time.
Right. 2 times 3.
2 times 3. Okay. In which case you'll have to rely on the handout because I won't get through this material in 6 minutes. This submission was prepared last December. So what I'm proposing to do today is to update you. We were advised at a workshop before Christmas that we should get our material in by the end of January. Hence, some of this material is a little bit out of date. Things have changed since then. So I did want to spend some time today updating that information that's in there. I don't think I'll have time to do that. Visual. This is a leaflet that is available outside in your public area. It's based on a map that's been around here for at least 10 years. It covers the network of routes that are suggestive for people who wish to walk, cycle or ride a horse on the Kāpiti coast. And Peka Road is in this list here. It's described as the Waikanai Beach to Peka Loop. On the front page, it suggests that these are short, safe, easy and fun trails. You'll see the comments from the Waikanai Community Board in my submission that suggest that this is the most dangerous road in their area. And they suggest that the traffic numbers will be doubling at the end of this year. And I would suggest in addition to that when the expressway is linked from the north from Otaki, traffic will probably be finding it a little difficult to adjust after driving 15 kilometres on an expressway to driving on a local road at 60 or 50. So I think the problem is going to get worse as it increases. My group supports the long-term plan. We support the funding. We understand there is funding in years 4 to 6 for some sort of physical improvement to the road. There doesn't seem to be any detail yet. Council has not done a traffic count of cycle movements for the last 10 years, which I think suggests that the staff are not attuned to what's required. And we suggest that with NZTA's problem at the moment with funding, this funding may not materialise. So we're very sceptical. 3 years ago, it was going to be in the long-term plan 3 years ago. So we're still sceptical that the long-term solution will ever arise. That's why we're calling for a short-term action, immediate action, to try and fix the problem at the moment. Today, I've costed out. This is an update: $50,000 maximum. I was advised by staff that to review that speed limit will cost $30,000. In our paper, we suggest something like $10,000 for large, prominent signs asking people to slow down and share the road, some road marking, various forms of road marking, all up $50,000 maximum. If you look at the ACC costs for major trauma accidents between cyclists and motorists, I don't think $50,000 is too much to invest. particularly when you get something like 6 years of safer roads. This submission is also on behalf of equestrians. Unfortunately, Sherry Warwick isn't here this morning, but she has helped me with this submission, and she's put me in touch with 3 ladies who live on that road and who ride on that road regularly and say that that road is dangerous for horse riding. And I'm not imagining this, and they say that they would welcome something like a speed limit or getting drivers to share better. I want to talk again about speed limits. I talked about this in January, but unfortunately half the councillors weren't here in January. I want to mention speed limits again. The current 80k on the centre of that road is based on the 2017 speed limit land transport rule. That rule is about to change. The 2021 land transport rule has been out in draft form for 2 weeks. Submissions close at the end of June. That rule really picks up what the Labor government is now saying about the road trauma and getting traffic accidents down. It's saying that speed limits need to be reduced. It's saying that we need to share the roads better. It mentions specifically vulnerable road users. So it really gives a pointer to local authorities. That rule will come out later on this year. Yeah, so the current 80k speed limit in the centre of the road is based on the previous rule. The previous rule talked about a road hierarchy. I think the council looked at that road hierarchy approach and it said, well, this is a rural arterial, therefore we're reluctant to bring the speed down below 80. 80 is the maximum for a rural arterial. It's not the minimum. It doesn't have to be 80. If you look at the new rule, it doesn't talk about road hierarchy at all. It doesn't suggest that a rural arterial has to be 80. We use an example in our paper of Grays Road, which links the Kāpiti coast with the Hutt Valley, Pautanui to Plymouth. That's been down at 60 for about 10 years. They're now just completing a very expensive off-road route. So you see the analogy here, put your speed limit down, put some simple traffic engineering out there, slow the traffic, and then get on with building the ultimate solution. So I think that's a useful analogy. Along with this message about the new rule, the new safety speed setting rule, we've got examples here. In my paper, I've mentioned the Nelson to Blenheim. I personally cycled on that road this year. I didn't see any traffic humps. I didn't see any major infrastructure improvements. I saw speed limits. I saw traffic driving at slower speeds. The government is very strong on this idea of getting speed limits down. They just announced Napier Taupo. That is politically a very dangerous action, but I think they're suggesting bringing the speed limits down from 100 to 80. Haywards Hill, I believe there's proposals there for limiting the speed limit. So NZTA is really saying to local authorities, get your act into gear and consider reducing the speed limits on roads that are used significantly by vulnerable road users. In my presentation in January, I said that the additional travel time would only take 10 seconds. We're only asking for 10 seconds of a motorist's time to travel at 60 as opposed to 80. We don't think that's an unreasonable request. And in our paper, we've suggested some traffic calming measures. I'm not suggesting I'm a traffic engineer, but I do know that there are solutions out there. An example we've given is Tihoro, not very far from here, where the agency has lowered the speed limit from 100 to 80, legally 80. The data I saw last week, the current median speed on that road through Tihoro is between 80 and 84. They haven't done any speed humps. They haven't done any major infrastructure. They've just used road marking paint and a few signs. So it can be done. Thank you.
You're done?
I'm done. Thank you.
Question time. Councillor Pravnov.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Sleeth, for coming along today. One thing you haven't mentioned is the potential, the impact that of the cycleway from Peka to Otaki opening in terms of small cyclists using Peka Road. Could you, have you done any work or have any thoughts about what will happen when that actually opens to the cycleway, to the cyclists, as well as to the cars going up and down Peka Road?
Well, I know the road cyclists at the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, where they suggested 17 bikes per hour. They would ride Peka Road and they would turn left and they would go up. At the moment, they're going through a work site, which has been difficult for the last 2 years, but they definitely go on. They go on to Tihoro, they go along Tihapu Road and Pukinamu Road and Morrison Road, and a lot of them go on to Otaki. So it's a route that's used currently by more experienced cyclists. I believe vulnerable cyclists. I've met a lot of vulnerable cyclists, seniors, people on e-bikes at Harrison's Cafe, and I think it wouldn't be impossible for those people to arrive from Otaki to Harrison's Cafe using. So I think the circuit will extend. To answer your question, the circuit will extend. This map here, the Kāpiti Coast Cycle Trail, which is promoted by the council, stops at Harrison's Cafe effectively because the council traditionally has been reluctant to put people any further north. But I think it would continue. Yeah, it would grow.
Do you understand that the number? You understand the number of cars going down Pika Road will also change as a result of that, and change will basically.
I haven't looked at any modelling, but I'm advised by the community board. The community board didn't agree with the council officer's suggestion. The council's the officer's numbers suggest that it won't increase, whereas the community board 3 years ago said it will double from 1,000 vehicles per day to 2,000.
Thank you.
Councillor Holbrook.
Hi, thanks for your submission today and for all the background work that went on to canvass your members and make sure that it's a representative view of the group. Much appreciated. I'm just wanting a bit of clarification. You're speaking on behalf of two submissions today. I've got number 12 in front of me, which is on behalf of the Cycling Action Network. What's the other submission you're speaking to today?
The other submission I was hoping to cover, but I won't have time, is two minor items. One was about a little bit of money within the budget, which is not part of the NZTA subsidised works, so that where you want to do a footpath renewal, like on Kāpiti Road last summer, you don't simply build the footpath to the same width as it currently is, which is 1.5, which is the maximum you can do for a conventional footpath renewal. You use a little planning, and you think of ahead, and you watch what's happening in the Northern Hemisphere, where they're doing social distancing and providing wider footpaths in areas of growth around town centres, and you build it to 2 or 2.5. The response from the council was that they're trying to stretch the budget. What I'm suggesting is that money outside the NZTA budget, unsubsidised work, $500,000 a year, looking at your current footpath renewal, would allow you to where you think it's appropriate around the town centres, to make the footpaths a little wider without NZTA rules being breached. That was one suggestion. The other one was about bike stands. And I have had a meeting with Michelle Parnell last week. I think we're on the same wavelength, but we are saying with the growth of e-bikes, people want to be able to park their bike where they can see it. So somewhere like Mahara Place, where you've currently got a very antiquated, old-fashioned bike stand by the old library. If I want to come into Mahara Place, I want to come to Councillor Coote's Cafe, I want to be able to see my bike. My e-bike might be worth $10,000. So I'd like to be able to chain it against something safe within Mahara Place and not outside.
Yeah, any cafe, we don't want Councillor Cootes to have to declare an interest on this. So maybe staff, if you could forward us that submission as part of today's paperwork, that would be good. I think it might be missing. Thank you.
It's straight after the LTP 12.
Okay, thank you.
Right, no other questions. Thank you very much for your submission. Thank you for turning up. The next one is Ramadi Village Business Association, Mr. Larissy.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, councillors, community board members and staff. My name is Bede Larissy and I'm here today on behalf of the Ramadi Village Business Association. That probably sounded like I'm going to bore you with a speech. I'm not. You've all heard me talk about Ramadi Village until you've kind of sick of hearing me talk, I think, probably. I'm going to take my submissions as read and really just add a couple of points, and I'm interested more, perhaps if we could have a discussion while I'm here, that might be more useful. I think probably a couple of points to note is that this submission, before it was filed, was sent out to everyone we have on our database at the Ramadi Village Business Association. I state in here that we represent more than 50 local businesses, but we've got over 70 on that database, so it has been put out to everyone we can imagine in the area. In the time frame that is sort of discussed in this document, during that time we have sat in Raumati and watched Otaki Town Centre, Mahara Place and Paraparamu Beach all receive town centre upgrades. So if there is discussion about should we fund Raumati Village or another town centre, I'd just like to say that I think it's our turn in terms of funding. One point that did come up, I remember in 2007 when we came down to the council here and the businesses all put sticky notes on maps for ideas for the upgrade. One of the things that I comment on was they asked, what should we do with the pool when it gets disused? And I put some comments about that. I don't expect my ideas necessarily to get taken on board, but it'd be nice if somebody's ideas could get taken on board. That building is sitting unused and it's a bit of an embarrassment for all of us. It needs some attention, it needs some funding. I'd like to see something happen with that building and that space. There's a massive opportunity for a really lively area down there if we could do something with it. Obviously, the Marine Discovery Centre is a massive idea and a really good one that we support, but it'd be nice to have a conversation about it. Beyond that, I'm really keen to hear if there are objections to Raumati Village receiving attention. I'd like to hear them so that we can talk about them. Otherwise, questions from interested parties would be welcome. Thank you.
Right, any questions? Councillor Compton.
Thank you for coming in today, Bede. I guess one of your key things from your submission was sort of revisiting that 2007 document and getting that updated. So you'd see that as being the first step in this conversation to make sure that, I guess, that vision is still what the village wants, and then getting the funding to come through after that.
Absolutely, and I think I've tried to be clear throughout this process that what I'm not trying to do is create Bede's vision for Raumati, right? That's not what it should ever be about. I've got some thoughts, but they should go into the mix. I'm keen to revisit that plan that was consulted quite broadly by the whole community. Let's pull it out the drawer, let's have another talk about it, let's figure out what stuff's relevant, what stuff's not. We've now got a climate change emergency. Let's see how that affects the village for the future. Okay, this is a 20-year vision. What does that village look like in 20 years? We've heard talk about cycling. There's no bike stands in Raumati Village. I'd love to see some bike stands, maybe even ones that can charge e-bikes while they stand. I don't know, but let's see the ideas.
Councillor Hanford.
Kia ora, Bede. Thank you so much for your submission and for all of the mahi that you do with, bringing together those businesses and creating the association, and then the mahi you continue to do. I'm keen to understand, in terms of revisiting that vision, what do you see good engagement looking like? How would you like that to start? And what do you see that looking like in your ideal world?
It's hard to say. I mean, I think no matter how well you do it, people always tell you did it wrong and badly. I think that the consultation that we had about the roading plan last year was really well done. I think it engaged a lot of local people, despite some people claiming now that they were never consulted with. You're always going to get that. But certainly, the more we can involve, certainly the local businesses, but also the community, the schools, the better. Again, I don't have a specific plan of what that should look like. I guess in some degree that's sort of council's, sort of on council's plate, but I'm happy to talk about how that might happen.
Councillor Holliday.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Great to see you, Bede, and thank you for all the work you've done creating that business association down there and bringing the pool to attention as well. That's a bit of a quagmire. But look, I just wanted to comment. You talked about the 2007 Community Outcomes document. Do you think there's perhaps leeway for us to be considering all those documents perhaps being more in a cyclic process with regards to being addressed? Because, I mean, it's been quite a long time since those documents have been looked at.
You mean the 7 outcomes documents?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, putting my hat on as the Chamber of Commerce board head of the town centres area, I would say definitely. Because all of the 10 town centres need attention, and if there were some visions cast for those areas, then why shouldn't they be looked at? I think Alan Milne talks in that document about these being things that we can refer to and we can hold council to account on. So yeah, more engagement based on those documents would be useful. And again, refreshing them. Are they still relevant? Are they not? Yes.
Councillor Coates.
Good morning, Bede, and I was expecting a slightly more flamboyant shirt from you today. It's good to see you here.
Focus should be on the idea, not what I'm wearing. Right?
Reading from your submission, as others have mentioned, there's the talk about the discussion, but ultimately that's going to lead to the need for some funding if there's some ideas that come out of it. So do you have in mind when would you be looking that to be thinking that we're in the LTP now? next year's annual plan or the years, you're trying to land this for, say, the annual plan 2022 or 2023? Because I think that's the imperative part of the discussion. It's when the rubber hits the road.
Yeah. Obviously, that's a real key part of the conversation. The time scale ultimately is not mine, obviously. I would say the sooner the better to some extent. Obviously, as retailers would certainly need some time to prepare for major works. But I think that consultation should be, maybe we should take a bit of time. If we took a year and a half with that consultation, that wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. Somebody suggested that works might start after 2026. For me, that's probably too long, given that we've already waited 14 years. I don't think I could stand waiting another 5. But, in a couple of years, if we were looking at something being rolled out, and what I envisage is a sort of a master plan that we can roll out in stages. Community board could even assist with some of that with small works like seating, as we've discussed, if that master plan is kind of set in place. So, if we could start in a couple of years, that'd be great. If it took 2 or 3, no one's going to die.
Kathy Science.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question's just really been answered, but I was just following up to say that, you need to have conversations with the community board and staff as soon as possible to get this moving along. So as soon after the LTP has been approved, you would like some conversations with staff and community board.
Absolutely, and something I say to people regularly is that if Raumati Village is the topic of conversation, then I'm available. So happy to have those conversations, staff, councillors and anyone interested. Yep.
Councillor Holbrook.
Thanks for coming in, Bede. We never get tired of seeing you, don't worry. So this year we did some consultation around Raumati Village roading improvements. Do you see that as an opportunity to incorporate some of this work, and what kind of conversations happened with the Raumati Village Business Association through that process?
You were quite heavily involved in the initial stages of that consultation. We worked with Glenn Osborne to help roll out the consultation on that, and with councillors Halliday and Hanford we were quite involved. We've since been involved again with 1 or 2 sort of issues around the rolling out of the actual work, and we're certainly happy to work with businesses that are struggling with what wants to happen. I think definitely I do make reference to that in my submission. I think whatever we do in terms of a big vision is obviously going to have to work in with those roading plans. If there's a consultation happening for roading plans, it might be an opportunity to start consulting about issues broader as well. I don't know, but I'm happy to work with council on whatever stage or size of consultation they want to work in.
Yeah, thanks for that offer. It's great to have you down there. Thanks,
Thank you.
No other questions, so thank you for your attendance.
Thank
you
you
for your ideas.
Cheers.
Mr. John Robinson. Mr. Robinson.
Sorry?
Yep.
I hadn't expected it to be so soon. Sorry about that. We are one people, all equal, with no special inherited position. Now that is how it should be, but not here. In Kāpiti, we have a dual divided government. Around 4% of the population, 3 iwi, are given a special role and power. This council has made this clear in the publicity and in the discussion document. This should not be. The Kāpiti District Council should be one body for all of us, without such discrimination and without this dual government, which gives additional rights to this chosen 4%. The 3 iwi, according to your figures that in your report, make up 4.2% of the population of Kāpiti. Members of these 3 iwi should have exactly the same rights as the rest of us. So you can see I'm not facing a particular issue in the plan. I'm looking at the overall situation and voicing the opinion that across the country we should all be aware of the need for one government for all of us in equality. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There doesn't seem to be any questions, so thank you for coming and presenting your submission.
I thought there'd be no questions, but it's an important point that should not be walked away from. That's why I came here.
Thank you very much for taking the time.
Yes, but he hasn't acknowledged it, and that might be a good idea.
We're running ahead of time now. Next, Marco, are you ready? Pardon? Oh, Mr. Robinson. There's one question from Natalia.
Sorry. Yeah.
Kia ora, Mr. Robinson. Ko Natalia Green, DPO Toku Ingoa, and I am the Ngāti Toa Iwi rep e Te Whakamininga here at Kāpiti Coast District Council. Thank you for alerting us to your somewhat selective viewpoint despite the evidence around you. And to the contrary, the Crown and mana whenua, essentially the Māori in this area, have a treaty. And so while we are one government, I don't understand where you're coming from, because at the back we did have, it's not here today, but we have a Crown representative, and then we have a rangatira, which is like an iwi representative or a mana whenua representative. And so this is where we're headed. These are drivers for change. And so 180 something years later, we arrive at this point. And so we welcome any conversations that you might like to have with mana whenua. In particular, Ngāti Toa puts their hand up to sit at the table with you on another occasion to help you to understand where we sit amongst council. And thank you again for your time. Ngā mihi nui, kia koe.
Should I comment?
I think there was an invitation for you to meet with Ngāti Toa at a separate point. I think we'll leave it at that. For you to accept the invitation.
I just believe we should be equal rights, and 4% should not have a special position. It's as simple as that.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor? No.
John?
Oh dear.
Sorry, Mr. Robinson, I just wanted to get some clarity. Do you
Excuse
consider...
me?
Martin, I just said that the gentleman has been given an invitation by mana whenua, Ngāti Toa, and that is something that you would accepted that invitation?
I didn't catch that.
So I think we should just leave it at that. Thank you very much. The next speaker, Marco Zeman.
Kia ora, good morning. I'm guessing that I don't need to tell you why I'm here. It's nice to see Wharemoku coming indoors with the flaxes on the ground here. Was that your doing, Jackie? You've obviously read my bits. I've only made a few parts in the submission, and it's just about making sure that we are in the LTP around a central park vision for Paraparamu, and working together with ministers as we gear up for those meetings, and having a unified front in the way of costings, etc., so the ministers understand exactly what we're looking for and understand we're all in the same boat together. So this is really just an opportunity for those last minute questions. Sophie's been helping me with some appointments we're making with Willie Jackson and Stuart Nash. Stuart Nash's meeting will be the most important because he's been delegated by Grant Robinson to overlook the project from its entirety, because it covers so many government portfolios. We've added education, as you can see from an email I sent out last week. We've now got a whole team of 4 working flat out on educational material, working alongside Kapakapa Nui School, and soon we'll start testing some of that stuff with Kāpiti College as we move up into the secondary phase. So we're really trying to address all angles of the government and trying to secure money from multiple departments. So it's going to take a bit of a unified front from council to help us get there as well. So I'll open the floor to questions or comments.
Questions? Councillor Coates.
Morning, Marco. Good to see you here, and applaud you on the work that you're doing. I think it's just fantastic. But my question, please don't take this as a criticism of the project, because it's certainly not. I recall when you presented to this council some time ago, the strong, I guess, the comment from yourself around no funding required from council. So in terms of the request for this to be considered through the LTP, could you elaborate further on what that means to you in terms of how that's reflected in the LTP?
I think all the stakeholders in the land should play a part in how we go forward for our funding. There's no change in the trust belief that we can do this without ratepayer funding. And I think if we have a coordinated plan, for instance, like the Ahakura extension, which is obviously a well-needed road extension, if that's added into the central park of Wharemoku along with the other aspects, and we are unified in the way we approach government, then I'd like to see that government actually funds a good chunk of it, and then those stakeholders who are landowners that will benefit will also then be required to chuck some money into the pie as well, of course. So, but yeah, we're certainly not changing our ratepayer funding rule.
Thanks, Marco.
Councillor Compton.
Thank you. Through the chair, you'll be aware we've got the national policy statement on urban development coming along. It's going to see a lot of intensification around town centres as mandated by the government. In your view, does that sort of intensification mean the urgency of a project like Whale Song becomes much more of a priority to secure that sort of central park area?
I think let's wrap Wharemoku around Whale Song, the House of Ferns, the larger park scheme. And yes, I think there is a sense of urgency, because if we are going to intensify our housing, we need to resolve our stormwater. And the stormwater resolution is over here in that land. And what we're proposing as part of fixing that issue for approximately 200 odd acres of empty land currently, which is all destined to be developed if the airport closes, that is. But of course there's a big chunk of land this side of the expressway. So I think, we just got to pull our thinking together and make sure that we combine all our costing, so we're not coming back to government later and saying, oh, we actually missed a really critical part of our thinking. And the Whales will still require some private funding, whether it's through lotteries, significant grants fund, etc. So we're still working towards having to fund most of the Whales. It would be nice if we can get the infrastructure of the Whales, the foundations, done during the ponding effect for the stormwater, which would cut the costs of the Whales down by about $1 million. So if we can combine some of the aspects into our infrastructure, then we'll carry on with the different aspects. Obviously, the Wharenui is another big opportunity for Wellington, not just Kāpiti. And maybe there's an opportunity, as I said in my document, that we reflect on the community centre that's closed currently, and some combination of representation of Puketapu Hapu Te Atiawa's desire to have a presence on the land, as well as an opportunity for us to tell the Kāpiti and the Wellington story, which you cannot get anywhere. So, I think we've got a really, really blinding opportunity to make something an exemplar for the rest of the country.
Thank you.
Councillor Halliday.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your presentation, Marco. Look, I just wanted to get clarity. So you started off with the Whale Song way back, and it's now moved along to Wharenui, the House of Ferns, etc. This now is a project, from your perspective, from how you're working it, as a park, as a large greened area, if you like, and with these features as part of that.
Yeah,
that's where you're moving with.
Well, I always said from day one when we formed the trust 3 years ago that Whale Song could not stand alone, and it was a question I had from day one. We've got this 1 acre site that Puketapu and Nahina have leased to us. We actually have that paperwork signed and sealed. We've got a 100-year perpetual lease, but we have to be concerned about putting a $9 million sculpture on a bit of land and then going, what are we going to build around it? So that's driven where we are today, and with combination of our communication with Puketapu, with Nahina Developments, with Coastlands, and you guys, this is where Wharemoku, the House of Ferns, has come from. And I think it's a much more structured project combined with the internal elements of the Wharenui, the Forest Nursery and Whale Song and the stream regeneration, which is a very exciting prospect for a large number of people around here that are keen to start planting. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Hanford.
Kia ora, Marco. It's been nice getting to work alongside you with another portai on as well. I was wondering if you could please just touch on the point in your submission where you ticked that you think no, council should not take a bigger role in housing. I'm just interested in your views on that, if you could expand.
Well, I think council's got a lot of. Well, you picked a little one, a small little. I think the council's got a lot on its plate, and the land that's available currently is all owned by property developers in one shape or form. There's larger chunks anyway, and they're all looking to put in some form of housing, etc. Community housing, maybe I should have just said nothing. I don't know. Is council in the business of being a landlord to bulk tenants? Is that where council wants to go? I don't know. So I guess that's a decision you guys have to make. Might have been the wrong answer.
Councillor Randall.
Thank you.
Kia ora, Brandy, Benny.
Unless you also tick, you support council-controlled organisations. Could you comment on that? Why do you think?
I was part of Zealandia when a CCO was appointed over the top of Zealandia, and I think it's helped create a structure that was more aligned to the philosophies of Zealandia and its ability to do its job. I think without the CCO being over the top of it, it was a little bit disorganised and had grown from a community group into something that was becoming a little bit unwieldy and making some rash decisions and having costs incurred that could be handled in other ways. So I think having the council involved in such an asset was a bit like the zoo. I think it's an important part of the wider Wellington region. So for me, the CCO was a good solution for Zealandia. And I can see it working in other places as well. So.
No other questions. Marco Zeman, thank you for taking the time of putting in the submission and speaking to it.
No problem. Thank you.
We are doing extremely well in one sense. Next, Georgia supposed to be here at 10:45.
Georgia isn't here yet, but we have been asking people to get here 30 minutes early, so she may not be too far away.
I'll take your word for it.
Here the couriers supply security to the top, so they go through porphyry process. It's quite lyrical in its thinking, very associated. So that whole, if you go to the top,
No, nothing? Okay, lovely, thanks.
Georgia, are you ready? You are indeed. That's really good. Welcome.
Okay. Kia ora koutou, ko Georgia aho. Hi, I'm Georgia and I'm a proud Kāpiti Coast resident. I live with my 9-month-old and my partner and we live just north of Waikanae. So before I briefly talk to you about what I'm concerned about, I just want to tell you I love living here. And I'm worried that you haven't heard enough good stories possibly in the submission. So I want to tell you I love our parks. I love walking along the riverside. I love borrowing books from our library. And generally I think it's a great place to be. My concern, and what brings me here today, is recycling. So I saw in your long-term submission in Kāpiti that you are really keen to have a waste minimisation strategy. That's fabulous. But then reading a paragraph down, it says you want to close my local recycling. So those two things are in stark opposition. So I thought I would explain to you today the value of the recycling, how I see locals like myself and others using it, and why it doesn't make sense for a council who wants to prioritise waste reduction and model the type of kaitiaki and environment care to do so. So in your plan, you note that most people have recycling. I'm not most people. What does that mean for me? It means that because I'm rural, I can't access the curbside recycling. So I know I'm not alone. How do I know that? Well, there's lots of us who live locally and rurally. There are lots of people I see when I go to the recycling with my son Joe that actually have crates far bigger than the recycling would allow. So not sure what's to happen to those people. And I also know that Waikanae and my surrounding environment also has people who aren't there full time. So they may or may not be able to use that curbside service. So when I see as a council you're really keen to prioritise waste minimisation, but then you want to close the Waikanae, it doesn't make sense to me. What you value, what you prioritise and what you fund shows what you really care about. And I'm telling you, it doesn't make sense. So I'm asking that you continue to keep it open. Why? I want to be able to take my son Joe each week to do the recycling. I want to see him and me modelling together the type of community care that we all want to see. So I think you would have seen in your early submissions that people are quite like me. There would have been themes, particularly in the early submission process, around people who value infrastructure and their environment. I'm telling you that the action of closing Waikanae doesn't do those things. Also, it is a very, very strange version of equity if your decision is other people don't have them, so we'll close yours. I'm challenging you to be transformative and say, well, if other people don't have quite that recycling access, how do we make that happen? So let's actually look at being genuine kaitiaki for our environment, genuinely caring about waste reduction and recycling, keeping Waikanae open, and actually thinking bigger about what else can we do. That's my submission to you today. Quite short and simple. Keep it open. Joe and I, my 9-month-old, we like doing our recycling there, and we don't have other options. Kia ora koutou.
Thank you very much for quite a refreshing delivery, I must say. Councillor,
Thank you.
Councillor Holbrook.
Thank you so much for coming in today and for the positive comments that you made and for your feedback around recycling. I understand the message that it sends if we close something like a recycling centre. However, we're under quite a lot of cost pressures at the council, and when you say you don't have other options, I'm looking at Google Maps and it's about an 8 to 10 minute drive to get to the Ōtaihanga transfer station. How much would that be a problem for you and the other users of the Waikanae transfer station? Because that's the argument we've
Sure,
heard.
absolutely, and I understand that. So I'm not qualified or confident to talk for others, but for me personally, I'm a real Waikanae local. So we stay, unless I'm working in the city, and if I could fix that I would, but that just means I stay locally. So when I'm going to do the supermarket shopping, I shop local. When I'm going to the park, Joe and I have our local favourite parks. So it's really easy for me to put our recycling in, making sure it's clean, washed and appropriately separated, and do it while we're on our way to do things. It means that it happens. My concern is that if you have to make a special trip or you're having to deviate from your local day-to-day, chances are it may not happen. It might be easier to just biff it in the bin, because if you care about the environment, you often don't actually fill your bin, so you've got a bit of space. that kind of thing. So I do accept that there are alternates like driving, but again, driving further and longer to recycle doesn't fit with a green Kāpiti that I have hopes and visions for.
Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Georgina, for coming along today. I'm the Waikanae Ward Councillor.
Kia ora.
You've raised some really valid points, and a couple of things. So Councillor Holborough made the comment about how there is an option of going to Otahanga, and I understand what your reasons are for wanting to use locally. How much further is it to Otahanga for you as opposed to Waikanae?
Well, I'm 5k north of Waikanae, so I live on the hill. There's a new subdivision going in, so there's a lot more houses that will be like me. So it's an additional, whatever Waikanae Township to Otahanga is, that's the additional Ks I would be driving intentionally for that trip.
Okay. So the other question I had, so it's basically they're looking at closing the recycling part of it as well as the green waste.
Sure.
Is your concern solely about the recycling?
I think the green waste has value too. An alternate for me, being rural, having lots of trees and stuff, would be to burn stuff. That doesn't seem to be a good option. And certainly I don't appreciate when my neighbours do. It gets pretty smoky.
Thank you.
Councillor Randall.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. How do you think a closure will affect older people? I mean, in Waikanae, you've got a large older population. Will they be inconvenienced?
I would imagine so. My reference point is my mother-in-law who felt confident driving Waikanae locally, but didn't feel confident going beyond the bound. I don't know why that was, but Waikanae was her local environment. So she was very happy to motor her little nana car to the supermarket, go around. But soon as she hit the 80 road, that was not for her. So I imagine she's not alone. I imagine there's lots of locals and older locals who feel confident and comfortable navigating around their local motu, but don't and aren't interested in going on Google, finding alternatives, getting the hours, getting in their car and going somewhere new. So I think it is potentially an equity issue in terms of looking at slightly marginalised populations, elderly, those who may not be able to afford the weekly curbside collections. So, yeah, I think that's context.
Councillor Hanford.
Kia ora, Georgia. I'm interested in how you see this fitting in with our climate emergency action framework and our response to the climate crisis as a council in relation to the conversation around the closure of the potential closure of the Waikanae recycling station.
That really feels like a trick question because I don't think those two things can sit alongside each other with any congruence or sense. I think saying we recognise there's a climate emergency, recognising that we need to do things differently, we need to prioritise, we need to think transformationally, and then closing recycling, I cannot reconcile those two things. And that's why I decided to come talk to you today to say, hey, maybe do a rethink.
Councillor Cooks.
I appreciate you coming along today and just challenging us in such a refreshing way. You said there just in response to Sophie that maybe we need to think about a different way to do things. And I think that goes, for ratepayers as well. The consultation document talks about closing it being a financial saving of 0.2% on average over the rate. So if we didn't close it, then it'd be an additional 0.2% to the average rate increase, obviously higher for others. Are you saying that cost for the convenience outweighs the benefit? Like you'd rather see that open and that additional cost be put back onto the rates rather than, I guess, change the way that you do things and travel a little bit further to Otahanga?
Absolutely. And without having a full view of where you have prioritised and where you have put money, I would say financial decisions and every financial decision that you are making today and in the long-term plan models your values. So it's not about 0.2%. It is about a line in the sand and sand that is ever eroding with climate change, saying, no, we do not accept that environmental care will be done on an accounting model of does it cost too much. The cost of not doing it is higher. I believe that there are savings. There will be ways that we can do things. And we need to think transformationally. We don't need to think about the environment as a 0.2% rate. We need to think as the environment as our absolute main priority. I want Joe to be able to walk along the beach for the next 80 years in Kāpiti Coast. And I'm concerned that he won't be able to do that.
And just lastly, are you aware that from the survey of the users of that, I think around 70% actually have recycling services to their. So I think where you are sort of sits in that upper segment that don't actually have those services.
Sure. So I would say that is 30% who do not have access, first and foremost. But secondly, and I did describe, and as a regular user, I can tell you that many a wagon, van, trailer and the like pull up, and they are far exceeding what their local curbside would be able to take. So you have identified that 70% of users do have some access to recycling curbside, but what I'm saying is that based on the volume I see in my weekly random statistical survey, call it what you like, that actually it far exceeds that value in terms of volume. So if you close that, those 70% of users would also be having to think of alternates. Alternatively, they could be crinkling, crushing and doing things you're not meant to be doing to recycling. So think about what also you're encouraging in terms of recycling behaviour.
Martin, Councillor Holliday.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I hear what you're saying with regards to people needing someplace to recycle, but what we've been told is fundamentally when people are turning up those trailers, there's a lot of rubbish going into the recycling process as well, which sort of circumnavigates the reason for it being there. And we're talking about council looking at ways to explore new ways of doing things. So this has been a trial with regards to that, and what's come back is where we're at the moment. And do you see if we're trialling these things and they aren't working the way that they're meant to be working, that we should be looking at other ways as well? So if something doesn't work, we try other things, or do we need to be looking at education with regards to what people do with their recycling as well?
Sure. Let me say yes to innovation, yes to creativity, yes to reviewing. But I would suggest that if people aren't recycling properly at the Waikanai transfer station, they aren't doing it at home properly either. I don't think there's any feature about the Waikanai refuse station which means that people are less likely or more likely to use it properly. I think there is some real need for education and greater development. As a random aside, I've done some fabulous waste-free parenting courses which taught me a lot about recycling and how to do it right, which I didn't know. So I think there are some real opportunities there. And I do acknowledge you're doing some really cool things. I've signed up to your worm and composting voucher, and so I do want to acknowledge you're doing some really cool things. I just say keep going.
Councillor Compton.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, just picking up on Councillor Hanford's question, do you think that we're, creating sort of a perverse incentive, given we've got a climate emergency, that if we close the Waikanai recycling centre, then we're actually forcing people to drive further and burn more carbon emissions to get to Otahanga?
I did write a few words that I shouldn't use today, and I would say because it just doesn't make sense to me to make me drive further, make me spend more resource on trying to do the right thing for the environment. The maths just doesn't stack up for me.
Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Through you, Mr. Chair, can I just clarify something that another member has said in questioning? Okay, so first of all, thank you very much, Georgia, and I just wanted to, really great thanks as the waste portfolio holder. I'm just so delighted, and you can keep bringing your friends on. But I just wanted to...
I don't have any.
Yeah. I just wanted to clarify that the ability to take your recycling material resources to Waikanai is no trial. I think what staff were referring to was the red, yellow, blue bins that were put in McLean Park.
Oh.
Okay, but that's been... The recycling facility at Waikanai has been a permanent fixture for decades.
And the labelling has been improved, and I think it has made it easier, and the pictures as well are great.
Thank you.
On that note, no other questions. Thank you, Georgia.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
She's emailed the media advisory to all of the media she had on her list. So yeah. MPs who might come down, or media, or... Well, maybe, but then I guess those... Yeah. I think it's illegal stuff.